When astronomers first noticed 3I Atlas emitting powerful jets of gas and microcrystals of water into space, no one was surprised. Comets regularly evaporate as they approach the Sun. But surprise came later, when spectral analysis revealed that these jets followed not a chaotic natural pattern, but a rhythm that repeated itself with precision down to the second, as if someone had predetermined their schedule. A typical comet emits gases in response to surface heating, but Atlas's behavior seemed as if the surface itself was choosing when to exhale and when to remain stationary. In some observations, the jets appeared with an accuracy of 0.3 seconds relative to the previous cycle.
This doesn't happen in natural objects. Chaos is always stronger than order.
Scientists from the European Southern Observatory attempted to explain the phenomenon of rhythmic jets by a rotational effect. When a comet has certain cracks, equal amounts of gas can escape from them with each rotation of the nucleus. But the problem was that Atlas's rotation was unstable. Its speed varied slightly depending on its orbital position, but the ejections were not. They remained as precise as if they were triggered not by rotation and heating, but by a control system. Physicists tried not to pronounce this word out loud, but when NASA compared the intervals between ejections, they revealed an almost perfectly regular grid, reminiscent of an engineered cooling cycle.
And here's where things get weird.
A temperature map of 3I Atlas's surface, constructed from infrared observations, showed that the ejections originated not from 1 or 2 active sites, as in typical comets, but from 4 points located almost symmetrically around the rotation axis. This is a geometry that shouldn't exist in nature. If ice melts, it does so randomly, depending on its composition, impurities, and surface structure. Atlas, on the other hand, seemed to open 4 valves, releasing pressure and then resealing the surface with an almost perfectly smooth surface. Spectral analysis of the water raised even more questions. An unusually low content of heavy water, D2O, was observed in the Atlas emission. Typically, the ratio of heavy water to regular water is a marker of a substance's origin. Every celestial body leaves a signature. But Atlas's signature was anomalous, even for interstellar objects. It felt as if the water had been artificially purified, as if it had undergone processing. Some researchers compared the composition of the emissions to water passed through graphene-based filters. Minimal impurities, minimal isotopes. It looked not like a natural icy material, but like an industrial byproduct. It was then that a hypothesis emerged that would revolutionize the entire discussion.
One of the OSIRIS-REx mission engineers, studying the emissions dynamics, noticed that the intensity of the jets matched the behavior of liquid-type cooling systems used on deep space vehicles. Many spacecraft, especially experimental ones, dump superheated liquids to equalize pressure and prevent structure overheating. On Earth, this is accomplished by chemically active liquids, but in an interstellar spacecraft, especially an ancient or autonomous one, the system could use water as the most neutral coolant. This explains many things. Why the jets are not chaotic, why they repeat regularly, why they are anomalously clean. If Atlas contains a system that requires cooling, for example, a power core or a magnetic engine, then the water jets are not the comet's disintegration, but a technical process. Later, Japanese researchers from JAXA noticed another important fact. The speed of Atlas's jets was too high. It cannot be explained by solar heating. The surface temperature was insufficient to evaporate the ice with such force. This means that the water jets are ejected under pressure, as if driven by a pump. And here's what became truly frightening. The directions of the jets were aligned with the object's motion. On a typical comet, the jets fly apart in different directions, but on Atlas, they worked as if correcting its balance, maintaining its orientation in space. This isn't just cooling anymore, it's vector stabilization, a principle used by spacecraft to fine-tune their attitudes. Several astronomers had a thought they were afraid to voice. What if Atlas is a ship in disguise? With each new observation, this theory seemed less far-fetched. There was another hypothesis. Atlas isn't a ship, but a container whose shell camouflages the mechanism inside. Imagine an ancient probe, covered in a layer of dust and ice to look like a comet. This would explain why its outer shell is so natural, while its internal processes are technological. Perhaps Atlas is an object that cloaks itself, traveling for millions of years. Its comet mask makes it undetectable to primitive civilizations until it reaches a certain point. But what's even more alarming is the structure of the water plume. Scientists originally think it was noted that after its outbursts, Atlas leaves behind a trail of unusual shape. Not blurred, but multi-layered, as if the water were organized by magnetic fields. This can only be observed in systems where the jet passes through electromagnetic reinforcement, that is, through an engineering unit. This detail became the final piece of the puzzle that forced some scientists to admit either Atlas is the most unique of all comets, or it is the oldest ship ever to pass through our solar system. As more data poured in, the theory of controlled water jets stopped sounding like a wild guess and started resembling an unavoidable conclusion. The new series of observations from the ALMA array in Chile provided the kind of evidence that usually forces even the most skeptical researchers to stop laughing. ALMA detected not just water vapor, but a faint electromagnetic distortion synchronized with every jet burst. Natural comets do not generate structured EM fields. They sometimes interact with solar winds chaotically. They can even spark small plasma tails. But nothing in nature produces a repeating, clock-accurate EM fluctuation tied directly to fluid expulsion. Yet 3I Atlas did. Every time it exhaled, it produced a signature identical to what onboard systems would create when stabilizing internal pressure or dumping excess heat. Even stranger, the distortions weren't random. They displayed what looked disturbingly similar to coil harmonics, the type of EM disturbances you see when a machine uses conductive channels to regulate energy flow. Engineers from ESA compared the signal to archived data from ion thruster testbeds, and while the pattern was not identical, the behavior was uncomfortably close. This forced scientists to take a step back and consider a possibility that made everyone in the room deeply uneasy. If the jets are part of a coolant system, then something inside Atlas is generating continuous heat. And if something is generating heat, it means it is active. Active systems mean mechanisms. Mechanisms mean engineering. And engineering means intent. The problem is that nothing about Atlas looks like a machine, at least not on the outside. It still behaves like a comet in its optical spectrum, still reflects light with the characteristic roughness of dusty ice, still carries a tail of particles. But the more researchers studied it, the more it looked like the dusty shell was just that, a shell. Its reflectivity curve did not match any known natural cometary composition. Instead of a mixture of silicates, frozen carbon dioxide, and biologically inert dust, it had a surface that seemed far too uniform, as if it were coated evenly by an artificially applied layer. It reminded some specialists of ablative shielding, materials that are intentionally made to erode on the outside while protecting whatever lies beneath. If 3I Atlas truly is using water as a coolant, then its internal systems may be producing so much heat that they require regular venting. And if that's the case, then the spacing, timing, and symmetry of the vents suggest that they are arranged according to an engineered design. 4 jets placed at equal angular distances would allow the structure to regulate both rotation and internal temperature simultaneously. And this is exactly what Atlas seems to be doing. Its rotational wobble decreases seconds after the water bursts. Its thermal signature drops by the same percentage after each vent cycle. This kind of stabilization is something only spacecraft, or something behaving exactly like spacecraft, are known to perform. But then a new question emerged. If Atlas is a ship, why disguise itself as a comet? The leading hypothesis is that the disguise serves 2 purposes: protection and anonymity. Traveling through interstellar space for millions of years would expose any vessel to cosmic radiation, micrometeorites, and countless hazards. A thick outer shell made of layered frozen materials could absorb collisions and mask technological signatures from primitive civilizations. The cometary cloak
becomes a form of camouflage, making the object appear natural, uninteresting, and unthreatening.
It would pass through planetary systems unnoticed, unless those systems were advanced enough to look deeper. Another argument in favor of the artificial object hypothesis emerged when scientists realized the water jets were far too pure to come from a natural ice reservoir.
Over millions of years, any comet's ice becomes contaminated with metals, carbon compounds, and interstellar dust. But Atlas ejects water that is so clean it resembles industrial-grade coolant, free of impurities almost to a fault. No known natural process maintains water purity at that level for that long. This suggests that the water does not come from ancient ice at all. It might be synthesized, recycled, or stored inside the object as part of a closed mechanical system. Some researchers even speculated that the jets may not be water exhaust at all, but something that only resembles water under our limited observations. Perhaps the liquid is part of a propulsion system, not a coolant system. If Atlas uses magnetically confined plasma internally, the exterior jets might serve as a counter-reaction flow, helping adjust micro-trajectories too small for traditional thrusters. It would explain its uncanny ability to maintain a stable path for millions of years without collision or major deviation. A machine capable of recycling its own waste, purifying its own coolant, and maintaining a constant internal environment could theoretically travel indefinitely, its only limitation being structural decay. But if its outer shell constantly replenishes itself with captured interstellar ice, even decay becomes manageable. The most unsettling observation came from an international team analyzing how the jets behave relative to the sun's radiation pressure. Every known comet produces jets that bend or distort as sunlight interacts with the particles. But Atlas's jets remain astonishingly straight, as if held in place by a stabilizing force. The pattern resembles collimated exhaust, something that natural bodies simply do not exhibit. This suggests that the jets are being shaped, guided, or constrained by fields that keep them uniform. What kind of fields? No one knows. Magnetic? Possibly. Electrostatic? Maybe. Exotic? Increasingly likely. And then the final detail emerged, the one that caused the most debate. When analyzing the faint glow around the object, some astronomers detected a halo with a pattern inconsistent with dust reflection. Instead, the halo showed a repeating interference signature, almost like a weak energy envelope. A field surrounding the object could prevent tiny debris from impacting the shell, or regulate thermal gradients, or even help maintain camouflage. Whatever it is, it's not naturally occurring. It's not random. And it fits perfectly with the idea that Atlas isn't falling apart. It's maintaining itself. As the evidence piled up, more scientists publicly admitted the unthinkable. Atlas behaves like a spacecraft pretending to be a comet. The jets act like an engineered cooling system. The shell acts like a blade of armor, the symmetry resembles machinery, and the purity of the expelled water aligns with artificial recycling. The more humanity observes it, the less plausible the natural comet explanation becomes. But the darkest thought is the one whispered only in closed-door meetings. If Atlas is a spacecraft, then someone built it, and someone might still be inside. As the discussion around 3I Atlas intensified, one final dataset emerged that forced even the most conservative institutions to consider the possibility that humanity was observing something far older and far more deliberate than any natural comet. It came from a series of high-resolution spectroscopic readings taken during a moment when Atlas unexpectedly increased the intensity of its water jet emissions. At first, the spike looked like noise, an artifact of solar interference. But repeated measurements showed the same anomaly. A sudden, brief temperature drop across a large section of the outer shell, as if the internal structure had engaged a cooling cycle far more aggressive than anything previously observed. This temperature drop was so unnatural, so precisely controlled, that the only way to interpret it was to assume the jets were part of a system designed not only to dump heat, but to actively regulate internal machinery. Natural comets cannot coordinate cooling across their surface. They cannot target heat from within and expel it according to load. But Atlas did. And it did so in a manner consistent with reactors or high-energy mechanisms buried beneath the crust. The thermal signature resembled what happens when a spacecraft's core reaches a threshold and triggers automated coolant purging. For the first time, researchers admitted that Atlas looked like something alive in a mechanical sense, governed by processes intended to preserve its function, not dissolve with time. This theory gained momentum when teams from NASA and the Max Planck Institute ran simulations of the jet cycles. According to their models, the rate at which Atlas ejects mass is not random. It is minimally sufficient, meaning the object expels only the exact amount needed to maintain internal equilibrium. Natural bodies waste energy and mass recklessly. Engineered systems do not. Even more disturbing was the revelation that the jets corresponded to gravitational stress points in the interstellar medium. In simple terms, Atlas seems to feel the density of the local environment and adjusts its cooling accordingly. For a rock of ice and dust, such behavior is impossible. For a vessel designed to operate indefinitely, it is not only possible, it is expected. Parallel studies revealed something arguably more astonishing. After each major cooling event, Atlas's trajectory becomes ever so slightly more refined, as though its internal operations directly influence its navigation. The jets may double as both waste disposal and micropropulsion, fine-tuning a long-range course set millions of years ago. It does not behave like a lost relic drifting aimlessly. It behaves like a craft, following a predetermined route, capable of correcting deviations even after eons. If Atlas is truly a disguised ship, then its journey is not one of random wandering. It is a mission. Whether that mission is observational, exploratory, or something more complex, no one can say. But its precision suggests intent behind every kilometer it travels. Another piece of the puzzle emerged from observations of the jet composition. The water expelled during active cycles contains trace amounts of compounds that are extremely rare in natural comets. A few molecules hinted at complex organic byproducts that could only form inside environments structured for chemical processing. Some experts speculated this was evidence of onboard recycling systems, perhaps ancient, perhaps automated, converting energy, refining materials, and discarding the unusable excess. It raised the question, if the jets are the waste, what is the core producing? And exactly how advanced must the civilization be to build a machine capable of maintaining itself for millions of years, disguised under layers of natural debris? Then came the most controversial discovery. A structural echo buried deep in the spectral readings. When a high-energy jet erupted, the emitted water vapor briefly revealed a cross-section of the underlying material through refractive scattering. That momentary glimpse showed something impossible. A lattice that appeared geometric, repeating, and shockingly uniform. The internal pattern resembled woven alloys rather than ice. It suggested supports, frames, ribs, the skeleton of a machine, hidden beneath kilometers of frozen camouflage. Some panels seemed angular, others curved with perfect smoothness. None of it looked like geology. It looked manufactured. This finding spread quietly among scientific circles, hidden from the public behind vague reports. But privately, researchers debated a single extraordinary question. What is inside 3I Atlas? Some believed it was a probe, an autonomous messenger from a distant civilization. Others argued it could be a seed ship, carrying dormant data, instructions, or possibly even biological material. A few went further, imagining crew chambers, suspended systems waiting to activate. Most dismissed the idea of living beings on board. No biological system could survive such a journey. But an AI could. A self-maintaining machine intelligence could endure endless time, guiding its vessel silently across space. Yet perhaps the most chilling interpretation is also the simplest. Atlas may not be traveling to us at all.
It may be traveling through our system, as it has traveled through countless others, quietly observing, recording, and continuing on its path.
The jets, the cooling, the waste expulsion, the artificial shell could all be part of a design meant to protect a machine destined to roam alone between the stars for eternity.
If so, humanity is witnessing something akin to a passing ghost, a technological relic far older than every civilization that will ever rise on Earth. Still, there is one detail that cannot be explained by the passing ghost theory. Over the last observations, the timing of the jets changed subtly. They became slightly more frequent as Atlas approached a region where Earth-based radio transmissions have been strongest over the past decades.
It could be coincidence. It could be misinterpretation of the data. Or it could be something far more unsettling. The object may be responding.
The jets might not merely regulate internal systems. They might serve as a communication channel, a method of altering reflectivity or emitting signals disguised as thermal noise. If Atlas is actively listening, analyzing, or interacting with our electromagnetic environment, then humanity is no longer observing a vessel. It is interacting with one. The idea that Atlas is responding to us sparked fear and fascination across the scientific world. If the cooling cycles double as signaling mechanisms, then every jet burst might represent a deliberate response, or at least an automated reaction, to stimuli we did not intend to send. Some astronomers began to study the timing of the jets as if they were encoded messages, looking for patterns hidden in the intervals. A handful claimed to have found them. Subtle ratios, harmonic correspondences that could form a mathematical language. Whether this is true or simply the human mind imposing meaning on randomness remains unresolved. But the possibility that Atlas is both machine and communicator changes everything. And so the final question remains. If Atlas is not a passive traveler, but an engineered construct disguised as a comet, releasing coolant and waste in structured bursts to preserve its ancient systems, then what happens when it gets closer? Is it merely passing by, indifferent to us? Or is its disguise, its shell, its jets, its silence, part of a protocol designed to engage with civilizations only when they reach a certain level of awareness? For now, humanity watches as 3i Atlas continues to drift forward, shedding perfect arcs of crystalline vapor like breath from a sleeping titan. We see the mask, but somewhere beneath that mask may lie an intelligence older than our species, older than our world, and possibly older than the concept of civilization itself. And as long as those water jets continue to pulse with unearthly precision, we are forced to confront a truth far more profound than any science fiction. We are not observing a comet. We are observing a machine that has crossed the galaxy disguised as one.